Everybody, I have a treat for you. Ahmed Baba is back. He is, of course, a journalist and a political analyst. I want to say publishes, but it just doesn't sound right. He writes, he does podcasts, he does all kinds of news through all kinds of media, all of which you can find at Ahmed Baba News on Substack.
Thank you. Appreciate
Um,
appreciate the shout out of the URL as always, man. Thanks for
yeah,
having me here. It's always great talking to you. Every time we have a great back and forth.
yeah, I learn a lot. And look, we have some time, and I want to do this. There's just so much to talk about, and I think we have to start. I mean, I want to talk about Michigan, but I don't want to start with Michigan. I want to start where like the news has started for 10 years, and that's with Donald Trump, right?
Hmm.
Has the country, do you think, made up their mind finally about him? Do you think we've turned a corner where, he's just a tired old man who doesn't know how to do his job, and people are beginning to figure that out? I mean, I know he's got a hard core there somewhere, but it seems like I mean, let's just start with one that I know you've talked about. Do you think the country knows how corrupt he is?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the grift is so apparent. I just did a video on this. It's in everyone's faces now, finally. I mean, we're seeing that the con is combusting. I think we've seen in the polling last week, he had his worst ever week of polling I think I've ever seen, with
Yep.
CNN having him at 34%, matching an all-time low, Quinnipiac having him at 32%, I believe it was an all-time low.
Hmm.
We had another poll from The Economist, YouGov had him at around the same amount. So he is really polling terribly, and not to mention his polling on the economy is down in the gutter, even lower than his overall approval. So the American people are seeing it clearly. Like, you can't unilaterally raise prices while you're enriching yourself to the tune of 2.24 billion last year,
Right.
1.44 billion in crypto, profiting directly from industries that you directly oversee. And the American people see like right through it. I mean, we could tick through all of the grift, but they're really seeing right through it.
They are. I mean, that brings up a couple of interesting points because you and I are doing this in part because the media channels that used to be here seem to be broken.
Mhm.
Right? And yet Americans, I mean, yeah, I think belatedly, but Americans are able, despite all the propaganda, despite the captured news, they're able to see what's happening, and that's still amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially how fractured we are. Like, we all have our own algorithmic realities
Yep.
where we're not all consuming the same 15-minute big three, network news. And
Mhm.
and yet people, the reason why is because his corruption and his incompetence broke through to
Everything.
Americans' everyday lives. Everything. Like, now you see him make a belligerent, reckless move in the Middle East, and you don't need to check the headlines to
No.
know something happened in Iran. Literally the other day, like, I had a newborn son, so some like there was like a week or a
Wait
month.
1 second. Congratulations.
Thank you,
That's the
brother.
best.
It's beautiful, and I had took a little bit of time where I was kind of like,
Yep.
relaxing for the first little month and kind of just bonding with him. And I hadn't checked the news that morning, and I go to the gas pump and I see gas hit $4. I knew right there something happened in the Strait of Hormuz. Something happened with Iran. The ceasefire combusted, and I think Americans can see that too, where they don't need to be tuned in and be a news junkie to know that Trump is incompetent and negatively impacting their lives.
Yeah. Is polling as bad as Nixon was in his last moments? Um, People know he's a grifter. They know he's not doing that the job he's doing isn't making our lives better. So what's in it for Senate Republicans to wrap their arms around him and continue to do crazy things like, say, corrupt Todd Blanche should continue to weaponize the Justice Department? Like, do they all want to go down in flames?
I mean, that's what has been so confounding. There's no more electoral really reasoning for them to back who's becoming the W. Bush level approval ratings. But you might see some polls where he's in his 20s in approvals here in a little bit. And that what used to be pariah status. You used to want to try to back away
Yeah.
from that president. So for them to still enable him in this way, especially Todd Blanche, when he could just stay in, there's not that much repercussions. He could just stay acting. Like, what are we doing here? And I think a lot of it is honestly, I'm starting to think it's the grift. I'm starting to think that they think they know that their career after the Senate, like Tillis, for example, who's not, running for reelection, it still needs to make some money within the Republican sphere, right? Like they still want to make money in the industry, and I think they see the way that the money is just flowing to Donald right now. I think that it's all self-interest, like because there's no logical reason for those who aren't, running for reelection
I
to
guess
back
that's
Bland.
just so sad. I mean,
Yeah.
you teach young people about democracy, and they don't say it out loud, but I can see it in their faces. They're saying like, why would I go to bat for democracy? What is like this form of government doing for me?
Yeah.
And I've worked in other parts of the world that aren't democracies, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they have a government that wants to make people's lives better. Um, I mean, we have some work to do to remind people that the reason our democracy isn't making people's lives better right now is that these guys have managed to capture part of democracy, and it's not actually working for the voters. It's working for the money.
Yes.
It's working for the map makers. We have to get it
Yes.
back. And then when it works for voters, it actually does deliver.
Yes, and that is the thing, is telling the story in a concrete way and tying the grift and the corruption, the self-interest
Yeah.
to the fact that it's not helping the everyday American, and also telling the story, the full story, trickle-down economics, that we're in the culmination of, the failed Reagan policies. We're still living, we just had the largest legislative wealth transfer in history with the big, beautiful bill. Like there's all of these bills and moves that entrench the K-shaped economy. And right now, Trump is the personification of the K-shaped economy, and they deliberately are making democracy work for them and not for the everyday American. And that's the message. And that's where we see some of these, I know we're gonna get to Michigan soon, but that's why some of these progressives are doing such a good job.
Yeah. I mean, like, who's for mass deportations anymore? Right? Maybe some people, but not most people. Most people after Chicago and Minneapolis, they're like, this is just cruel. This isn't
Yeah.
what we signed up for. And who's for like ending our government's commitment to civil rights and voting rights? I mean, maybe some Republicans who are in office, but not most Americans. And cutting Medicare, like that's just politically stupid, I think.
Yeah, it should be, right?
Right? Or big tax giveaways to the wealthiest. I just don't see who the constituency is for ending corporate oversight and regulation these days.
I
I could
think,
go on this list of things that go off or ending environmental protection. The poly market. This is one I just learned. You can bet on whether there's going to be a wildfire. And so Democratic senators have written a letter trying to get the CFTC to stop it because they say you're just encouraging arson in this credible year of fires.
it's
And
insane.
the administration, nah, let's just bet.
That's insane. It's betting on climate change. It's betting on that's betting on crises. And then Trump's actively trying to prevent regulation of this gambling. It's a dystopia that we're seeing here, and there's no
Right?
constituency for it. And there needs to be, like, that's why the next Democrat has to tell that story and make the case for a more ethical regulatory system that doesn't allow for this to run rampant, because like we talked about, I believe one of our last conversations about how this is just like Trump's not just a symptom, he's a culmination of
Yeah.
everything we've seen. And with the, like, I think that lie that made these policies palatable to working class voters and voters that you used to traditionally be Republican or were Democrat at different times, as we fought over the different demographics. But like there was a lie that immigrants and brown people and welfare queens are responsible for their cheating the system. That's why you're not getting ahead. Well, they just gave tax cuts to the rich. And people see right through that right now.
I think they do. I mean, and now they're going after Head Start. Like the Head Start's like one of the most successful
They do.
programs we've ever had.
Yeah, it is unbelievable to me. And then all the programs they've gone after, USAID, like it is a destructive dismantling of the federal government. And Americans now, like that's why Democrats have to make a case that government is actually here to help you. And we're again, I often say I think we're still living in the Reagan era, not the Trump era.
Yeah.
Like we were still living in the calm with those tropes, like the government, government's not here to help you. Like all of those things. And it's like I think people are starting to recognize that the role of government should be to solve
Help
these
people's lives.
issues.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right. All of the worst pieces of our government for the last 40 years have managed to find them to be put together at the same time right now. It's just, it's the worst of the worst. All right,
Yeah.
but people now know this. So the question is like, since we know it, we ought to be able to throw them out. They don't want us to throw them out. They're going to cheat.
Mhm.
They've already started to cheat. So we have to win an election that isn't free and isn't fair, like the Hungarians did.
Yep.
All right,
And
so
make it too big to rig,
yep,
like the
yep,
Hungarians did.
yep. All right, so we're starting this process, and the way we do this is, of course, first we got to pick our candidates, right? And that's what we have primaries for. And I want to talk to you about Michigan, but I want to talk about it this way. I want to help us understand for the last 6 months or a year, you see all these stories. The Democrats are in disarray. The Democrats are idiots. The Democrat, right? Like we don't like the Democrats. And I think most of those stories they're talking about like the DNC, this small
Mhm.
thing at the top, right? Which had about zero to do with the results in any
Yeah,
primaries we've had across the country. Because the Democrats aren't the DNC. They're just plain old people who are out there,
exactly.
right? Okay, so talk about Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing is the kind of dismantling of party structure. Like there's not a Democrat like it's wild that the Democratic Party can have such a low popularity, but then be up in the generic ballot, right? Because people, when they're asked about Democrats, are thinking about their candidate that they like, right? They're thinking that that's what's happening now. You might be thinking Zohar Mamdani, you might be thinking Abdullah Said, you might be thinking AOC when you're asked about whether you'd vote for a Republican or a Democrat on the ballot. And so you don't think Ken Martin when you're asked, like, what do you think of the
Right.
Democratic Party versus Republicans? And I think in Michigan, what we saw was the Democratic establishment have a wake-up call where we had one candidate who was going against corporate money and running, and his literally slogan, Abdullah Syed's, was money out of politics, money in your pocket. And then we had Haley Stevens who really misread the moment and didn't see how toxic it would have been to accept that amount of money and not even like kind of walk a line on Israel to say we acknowledge that Netanyahu, like she could have just went towards Netanyahu, and I think it's also so there's a couple things. There's a corporate money aspect in Michigan. There's the populist message in Michigan, the affordability side, and then there's this new kind of Israel litmus test we're seeing brewing in the Democratic Party.
Hmm. I think there is a lot of healing to be done in the Democratic Party in Michigan. And let me
Yes,
ask you about this because you looked at the vote totals, and Haley Stevens won biggest in the blackest parts of Detroit, right? So, and uh, and it's not lost on black voters in Michigan that a lot of Abdullah Saad's base was not helpful to Kamala Harris,
that's a really good point.
and they're like, okay, I get it. You didn't help us, but you want us to help you. So what does he have to do to I mean, look, Democrats
This is
do
the key
not win
question.
by taking black voters for granted. They do not win unless they represent the interests of black Americans and do it legitimately. What does he have to do to convince voters in Detroit that he is their candidate now?
This is the question, and the one I posed right after I'm looking at the vote totals because it's not it's black voters that he underperformed with.
Yep.
I've said that and I got a lot of heat for it, even though it's true. And it's also working class voters. Like why was it that white,
He won
highly
the educated
educated, yeah,
vote.
why is it that white, highly educated people are the ones that always gravitate towards progressives, right? I mean, that's what we see in race after race. And as someone who wants to see progressive policies pass in the world, in America, we have to ask ourselves these hard questions. I mean, it's just what the data says, and you can't ignore it. And so there has to be a question is number one, why are black voters skeptical of these some of these progressives? I think I have an answer for that. And then there's the harder question, which is why is it that working class voters in race after race, in primary after primary, I mean, in the general, it's a different story a lot of the time, but in the primaries, why is it that working class voters tend to go not for the progressive when the whole message is about working class folk, that literally should be tailored to them. So those are the main questions that Al Sayed has to ask himself and the other members of the progressive side of the caucus. And with black voters, I think it's just because they're more moderate. Historically, we've seen. I mean, look at Biden in South Carolina. Look at the choices they make. They're pragmatic. They are thinking they're big picture, especially older black voters. How do we beat the Republican? How do we re-entrench black power? How do we, what can we do to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act? What can we do to push black interests? So they need to be convinced in the electability argument, I think. There's that because that was one of the reasons why Obama didn't do in the early days. Some black voters were skeptical Obama would win until he won Iowa. Until he won Iowa, then it was like, oh, he can win white people, so now he's electable. And
Right.
then with the working class voters, I don't know why some of them maybe aren't hearing the message. Maybe it's the ad spend. But why are they now? Why did they go towards Haley Stevens when the entire message of Al Sayed was about working class? So those are like real hard
Yeah, I mean,
questions
in the primary,
progressives
they
have
were
to ask.
both pitching a kind of a working class message. It didn't work for Haley Stevens because she was pitching the message, but she took all the money. So right, but the messages were all working class because I mean they're both
Of
Democrats and
course,
they're
yeah,
right.
exactly.
So a little more understandable. But I'm just I think the hard feelings in Detroit. I want to win this. I want to win this seat. I want him to be the next senator from Michigan. But I think he's got to spend time in Detroit and
Yes.
and real like listening and I mean this is a community that hurts, and needs um, a lot of help. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of help.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, black voters specifically, I think there's a lot of anger at the uncommitted movement.
In Michigan for
In
sure.
Michigan,
Yeah.
especially Dearborn, and I think that definitely could be playing a role. I also think Haley Stevens really touted her previous affiliations with Obama,
Hmm.
and like made it a point to talk to black voters. That's one of the critiques that I have of some of the like, especially Bernie's earlier messaging and some of the progressive messaging where they don't really center black people. Where it's
Look, you
where
can
it's
love Bernie, but Vermont is like the third
of
whitest state
course,
in the
yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah, and
It helps to actually spend. I mean, I live in a great diverse city. It helps to spend time with people to understand people, which is why I
exactly.
think the man's got to go to Detroit.
Yeah, he's got to go to Detroit. He's got to hear him out. He's got to hear what is driving their vote, and then tailor some of that messaging into it because clearly just the class focus, with the absence of race inequality isn't landing. And I think he could also take some notes from Ossoff as well, who in
Mhm.
Georgia, um, you know, does black people love them some Ossoff. I gotta say, all
Yeah,
right, like
yeah,
black people love them some Ossoff.
yeah,
And he every time he gets a chance, he talks about like when he was asked about the Trump talking about the 2020 election, he centered that around Trump trying to disenfranchise black voters.
yes,
And that's people try to act like that's from the woke one era and we shouldn't be talking about racial inequality anymore, but Ossoff does it and it works for him in a reddish, mostly reddish state, right? So I think there's
Can I just say
there's
about
lessons
Georgia
there.
for 1 second? And I don't mean I love my senators in Illinois, but the two senators in Georgia make the greatest team. Those two, they are just
Yeah,
fabulous.
they're incredible.
I mean, Reverend Warnock is like every time the right wing says like we're going to tell you what it means to be Christian, and he gets up there and he like just it's just the best.
Yeah, it's great. He goes off and him and Talarico are doing something really interesting on the religion front, pushing
Hmm.
back on Christian nationalism. It's wonderful. But yeah, in Georgia, him and Ossoff make a great team. And Ossoff, I gotta say, like just candidly, he's one of my top picks for 2028 of one of the people who are most viable.
Yeah,
But a Jewish senator for who can win independents and voters that lean right. And black people love him
yep,
sounds to me like someone who could win the primary, right? So I think that's what I'll say it. I think he's going to work on that. Is
yeah.
try to like figure out a way to walk that line that can make a message more appealing to the Dem base itself, which is black people, and then really try to also bridge with Haley Stevens voters and Jewish voters as
Yeah.
well, because
Well, look, I mean, let's go to the Israel message for a second. Um, there's a civil war in the Jewish community.
Yeah,
There are there are people, I mean, for whom the state of Israel is the most important issue. Um, but it's a smaller group in America, and even among them, people who who remember the Holocaust, who just understand what that state has meant, do not. In America, I think the support for Bibi Netanyahu is like four people. Like,
exactly.
yeah, like you don't even have, as the Jews say, a minyan. You don't have enough people to even have a prayer group of the people who support Bibi Netanyahu and what he's done. And that's partly true in Israel. I mean, people are protesting him every day there. So the idea that Americans politicians would go to bat for the policies of an enormously unpopular government in Israel, and one that is committing these atrocities in the and let's, I mean, my view, and I don't just for a second, October 7th was terrible. Israel is not safer 2 years later. Israel says it's not safer. That's why it says it still has to be at war. But if 2 years of war haven't made you safer, then maybe you ought to question whether the 2 years of killing was worth anything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All I totally agree with all of that. And I think like, so much there that you said when it comes to the, starting with what you talked about the civil war in the Jewish community. I mean, I'm married into a Jewish family. My wife is Jewish. My son is half Jewish, right? So and I think if you think you hate Netanyahu, wait till you meet a progressive Jewish person. Trust me, you're not hating at your full capacity, okay? So there is, there is a lot of vitriol at Netanyahu, even from some Zionists that I
That's
know,
absolutely right.
that where they're like, I
Absolutely.
ignore. So it's like there's a way to communicate about it where you can talk about how horrible he and his far right coalition is. Everyone acknowledges they've overreached. Even Trump cussed at him on the phone, telling him he's got to chill, right? So I think like Israel, what Netanyahu has done has so overtly undermined the cause of Israel
Well,
himself.
he's like Donald Trump. He's led that country into a dead end. And,
Yes, and
and it's going to have to do some work to get out of it.
yes, exactly. And especially after October 7th, which was horrific on its own, flat out, no,
Yeah.
no way to
Yeah.
dispute it. It was disgusting what Hamas did. Hamas undermined the Palestinian cause in that moment as well. And then Netanyahu went ahead and Biden warned him, don't overreach like we did after 9/11. And then he went further than that and obliterated entire populations of civilians and did horrific crimes, war crimes, and which I think is pretty objective there
With enormous help from Donald
with
Trump.
enormous help from Donald Trump and a Biden who I think in his age did not recognize the new Israel he was dealing with. His mind was in the 80s, 90s. Israel was not in the Israel that we have today. And then
Which I do
Netanyahu,
not understand because as vice president, he had chance to see Bibi, and but Barack knew what Bibi was
oh,
up.
he saw him straight up. He clocked him, and that's why BB never liked him.
Yep. Yep. All right, enough of that. So that is an issue that Democrats can get past and voters can get past. Because in America, um, people haven't said they're not in the place where they're saying Israel shouldn't exist, but they're saying this slaughter has got to end. Got
Yeah,
to end. Can't keep funding this slaughter. It's not okay. It's terrible.
yeah.
And
I mean,
by the way, the Board of Peace is not the answer.
no, the Board of Bees is not the answer. A bunch of people trying to grift and carve up different business interests there. No, that is not.
The
That is not
latest
the
was they're
answer.
going to put a whole bunch of data centers there.
Just come on. Like you can't put you can't meld more unpopular positions together into like you're
They can find a way.
you're
You're
gonna
like,
throw
oh,
data
this is where
center.
we can put the data centers.
It's like they want to pull at 0%. I just can't like oh
It's
God.
just
But
cruel. It's so cruel. Speaking of cruel, how is it that it's okay for the president of the United States to continue to say, I mean, like Jean Pirro, the former Fox uh, person who's now, gotten a big role as
mhm,
attorney, a prosecutor in the federal government. She finally said, look, there's no evidence that this Olympic athlete
yep.
caused this problem, right? But and so we say, okay, well, he should be free. But the outrage is that the president of the United States thought it's okay to take an innocent person and throw him in jail for 10 years, just because I want to cover my ass. I mean, if
Yeah,
American freedom worth so little to this man,
it's worth nothing to this man. You know, as we've talked about this, he has no moral compass whatsoever. It's whatever serves him in that moment. It doesn't matter who he
no matter who
brutalizes,
the victims are.
who he wrongfully imprisons, who he targets. You know, they're going after Anthony Fauci, which was one of the most despicable things I've ever seen. A man who dedicated his life to public health, indisputably, you got to just say that with your chest. You know, like I'm glad the TMZ, the TMZ guy had this. I'm not sure if you saw this viral moment where he literally just did a whole segment talking about how disgusting this was, and we need more of that
And
because
yet the Senate is going to, I mean, the Republicans in the Senate, man, could care less. Again,
yeah,
it's like
they've held him in contempt.
it's a political suicide pact, and good, they should go down. But all right, so primary season, we've talked about Michigan. Primary season is almost completely over. I mean, we got Wisconsin's got some tricks ahead, but it is mostly over. How have Democrats done, do you think, in nominating candidates who can take back the House and maybe the Senate? How have we done?
I think for the most part, a great job.
I do too.
I think, you look at James Tallarico in Texas, you look at, Mary Pauletta in Alaska, you look at Roy Cooper in North Carolina, like, come on, to talk about shoe. And I heard Republicans stop spending money there, because they're getting cooked over there. You look at, the people we already have as incumbents, and also have to hold the line. And then you look at these House races where district after district, if you just the 2025 elections and the special elections as like a barometer, we're seeing 10 to 20 point swings towards Democrats in some of these districts. And I think we've seen a lot of candidate district and candidate state fit in most
That
cases.
is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a really important idea. And it's an idea that the Republicans don't have because they're a top-down party. You have to
Hmm.
fit with the president.
Yes,
In our
exactly.
party, I had this argument with somebody who said Democrats are in disarray. And I said, look, imagine you walk by and you see a softball game going on. And you don't see coaches. You just see guys out playing. Do you say they can't play? They'll never figure it out. And if you have a league and you got 10,000 softball games going on in one league, they both have coaches, right? But one is like in Washington telling every team how to play every game. And the
Hmm.
other's got like in the off season, he makes some trades, but then he pays no attention. Who's more likely to win? Right? The one who like every decision about whether you bunt or not is made in 1,000 miles away, or somebody who's like right there.
Yeah, exactly. Just like there's a war metaphor too. Like when each battlefield's going to have a different set of circumstances. You can't have just
Yep.
one general at the top who's far off from the battlefield. You have to have a decentralized structure, right? It's the same situation here, where you have individual districts, individual states that have totally different interests. You have a Abigail Spanberger type person, Mikey Sherrill type person, and then you have on the other side of the spectrum a Zohran Mamdani, right, that can win in the same election, and
Yes.
and
And
then they can work together. Like that's what
they work together.
Governor Hochul and sorry, go ahead.
No, but I'm just the way to get democracy to work is to do it local like this. Because then the people who are elected, they love the districts they're in. They
Yes.
know the districts they're in, and they're fighting for the people in those districts, not
Yeah.
for somebody else.
And
And
that's how you have
that
healthy debates.
and you get stuff done for people.
Yes.
So I don't think the fight, there's a lot of talk about like progressives have taken over the Democratic Party. And I don't know how you feel about that. I don't feel the difference between even some of the candidates you just named, right? They span a big left, right. Well, they don't. They span on the Democratic Party a big left, right, but they're pretty close in the grand scheme of things. I think this election was more about we are tired of let's make a deal and we want to play let's get shit done.
Yes, exactly. It's about fighters, people who are arguing a coherent message and
Mhm.
worldview. It's not
Mhm.
just like I just want to be in power. I want to do the same thing. It's we believe this. We believe government should do this for people. And I do think, obviously, affordability is a tether between all of these people. An anti-corruption message is a tether.
Yeah,
And
and
I
the
think
billionaires don't get to buy all the power.
exactly. So we're starting to see this midterm cycle common threads between a lot of these candidates. And I think,
Mhm.
I'm happy the DNC is in such a weakened role. I do think they need to change. Ken Martin needs to go and they need to have build up more trust before they manage the primaries in 2028, but separate issue. But I think when it comes to like a platform, I don't know if the DNC should be in charge of the platform anymore. I think the party the candidate who wins, or the candidate who, like Obama, right? Like we need a candidate who then brings their platform forward, ties all of this together, and then I think the
That's interesting.
Democratic Party will finally have a like cohesive party message. And like, because I think right now, it's all a bunch of decentralized, like we talked about. There's some progressives here, and then so the Democrat that can identify the tether between all of these candidates and unite. Like we all agree on affordability. We might not all agree on these other issues, but it's clearly, I think Israel's kind of becoming one of those that tethers every. Like I don't hear really anyone saying that. Well, actually, there are some APAC candidates that did win, like Wesley, beat Cody Bush. So I
Mhm.
think you stick to the simple stuff: affordability, anti-corruption, human rights, decency, and then you build a message around that. And the candidate
That's
that
it.
can do that
Yep.
cohesively brings it all together.
All right. So, do you have a favorite story from the primaries now that they're almost done? It was a pretty kind of amazing cycle in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, like, as in like amazing who had the best, like who had the one of the coolest journeys, or like,
Yeah, or just something, something. I mean, like I was struck um, right away uh, by the ad that was the first ad of the Paralympian basketball player
yes,
in Iowa,
yeah,
right? Who showed himself like crawling upstairs and dragging his wheelchair behind him to go knock on doors. And you know what?
it's
He's
remarkable.
gonna win in Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And it's like that's yeah, no, that's wonderful. And then there's, yeah, if we're going that route, like I think James Talarico in Texas, like I had my media startup at the time. We interviewed him back in like 2018 when he was like a state running for state rep.
Yep,
And it's like watching his journey and transformation and defining that moral voice, like his moral leadership voice that he's developed here in Texas,
very
and
important.
seeing how it's like he ran a totally non-toxic primary in spite of what some people try to claim when they come at him. He was totally ran on above board. Like one of the least antagonistic primary races I've
Well,
ever
let's talk
seen.
about that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's almost go back where we started. Texas has more Black Americans than any other state in the union. Right? Not
Mhm.
the highest percentage, but it's a big state. So more Black Americans live in Texas than live in any other state. And Tallarico has made a point, right, of reaching out. I mean, he won a primary against Jasmine Crockett, and there were hard feelings. And he's made and uh, Black voters were disenfranchised by Texas in that primary when Texas
Yes.
did the kind of cheating that it does. And Texas is a disenfranchised people's state.
Mhm.
So he's made a point of spending time in the Black community, talking about what he's going to do and how he's going to be, and listening and talking about strategies for fighting together. And that I think is a very good model for
Yes.
candidates.
Definitely. Abdullah Al-Sayed could take notes from that. So many candidates can
Hmm.
take notes, candidates who aren't doing as well with Black voters. And yeah, I think James Soudy goes on done an excellent job making a point of that, being gracious, not being angry about the attacks he's gotten as well. And I think, yeah, I mean, I see it working from right here, from campaign people over there. It is working,
Yeah.
and they're seeing a lot of Black support. I see anecdotally some of these rallies. And I do, I just got to say it candidly, and I might get heat for this because, her fans are very powerful. I think Jasmine Crockett has to do a lot more. I think she has to stop saying things that undermine him. And that's just my take. She was asked this week about whether she thinks Texas will go blue, and she's like, I don't know. And I'm gonna just go support candidates I think can win. But some of the candidates she just supported this week didn't win. I think she has to do more because the general election is way more important than any one person's career or hurt feelings. And Talarico has to get you can't like tacitly let some of the vitriol being thrown at him continue to be thrown when you know that wasn't really true. A lot of the anger at Talarico, like some people were saying he ran a racist primary, which is just not true. I'm a
Look,
black
I don't
man.
know how,
I'm a black man saying that right now. So my
yeah.
point is, I just think we got to have people come together in the primary, um, in the general.
we got to learn from them. I mean, we've had the Republicans know our internal pain points and they drive wedges and we fall for them. I
Hmm.
mean, Bernie's crowd was peeled off and maybe was responsible for Donald Trump winning the first time,
Yeah,
right? Because they said Hillary will never support her, right? Because they lost the primary. Um, we had the movement you were talking about in Michigan. I don't think that elected Donald Trump, but it might have elected him in Michigan. Uh, you
potentially.
know, um, so we have to learn from our mistakes and grow up and say we have like these fights we have with our friends are harder fights than those but we got to get over them.
Yeah, I mean Haley Stevens, I think, deserves a little bit of props here for, that was a really contentious, far more contentious than Texas,
Yep.
or
And
any
it
of the
took her
other
about three
primaries I said.
seconds to say I'm all in.
Had a preloaded statement.
Yeah.
All in. I'm proud to support you. Whitmer, who El Sayed kind of, said that there were still potholes in Michigan that need to be filled, kind of like, alluding to her statements.
Mhm.
Whitmer, I mean, like there is a thing where your ego is less important than our democracy. Whatever's going on, you rally behind what needs to happen. And that's what we saw with Haley Stevens. And I hope we see that with every other primary candidate that
Leader.
lost.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I, like there were some, I think, lovely stories. We're going to still see some interesting stuff in Wisconsin next week. They have,
What are your thoughts on that race? The recent,
well, like the Governor Evers has just stepped into the race. He
yeah,
had been out of it. He hadn't done anything. And now he is worried that the seat could get lost. He doesn't know that Francesca Hahn can win. And she's very popular and she's run a campaign that people love,
yeah.
So I I don't know, but I'm going to be spending some time between now and then getting to know about that race because it hasn't happened yet. And I've had trouble keeping up with the ones we've had all over the country till then. But what do you know about it? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Wisconsin I've only been there one time. I was here there early this year for the
Yep.
MLK speech I gave. So I got to meet, Governor Evers. I got to meet
Right.
Mandela Barnes and some of these other players here. And, I was kind of surprised at how this played out. Like I thought that, given how, Tony Evers kind of trying to graciously exit, right? He's retiring. I thought there would have been a bit more of a plan if they had, people in mind. And it seems that Francesca Hahn just came in here and was able to build the support that she needed. And
Yep.
I think like, there's a lot of being made about these interviews she had this Thanksgiving. I'm sure you saw she was asked about canceling Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Wasn't the greatest answer, but
Yeah, no. And
yeah,
it's an answer that the whole country will see if she's the nominee because the Republicans will put it on TV like every day.
yeah, so I think if she wins the primary, she just gotta tighten up on that, bring everything back to messaging, bring everything
Hmm.
back to affordability.
Hmm.
Could have said something like, "Oh, I don't want to cancel Thanksgiving," but I do think that some of these policies being pushed by Republicans could cancel Thanksgiving due to people changing plans because the things cost too much, this costs too
Yep.
much, that
Yep.
costs too much, XYZ. Here's my plan. So I
You
think
know, you're really good at this like messaging stuff.
I'm
Yeah.
trying, I'm trying. Um,
Did you ever think of running?
I've been asked. I've been,
Yeah.
but it's just, I'd rather just do the media stuff. I feel like I make better, more of an impact there for now.
Yeah. You also have a newborn.
Also have a newborn, so yeah, it's not happening anytime soon. Also, that's more of a question for my wife than for me whether she
These are
wants.
family decisions
Yes, these
for
are
sure.
family decisions. So at the moment in this political climate, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I just think Francesca Hong, I think she could pull it off. I think like some things get blown out of proportion, and everyone really cares more about the bottom line. I mean, if people can get away with being literally evil and depraved, then I think people have a gaffe here and there could end up working out.
All right. So between now and November, I think the chances that the Republican Party will have a epiphany and start to actually care about Americans is like zero. So
Yeah.
I think they will not improve their odds of winning between now and November. I don't think Donald Trump will start doing things that are actually good for the country and decide not to just try and line his own pocket between now and November. So I think
Yeah.
the Democrats, like, if we don't win, it's on us because
Yeah.
they are holding on to like disaster with both hands, right? They just like,
Yeah.
how many rocks can I put in my pocket before I jump in the water?
Yeah. Like the late Lindsey Graham once said, which was the most important thing I think he's ever said, where he said if we nominate Trump, it'll the Republican Party will be destroyed and will
Yeah.
deserve it. And
Yeah,
they
and
do
it's
deserve it.
true.
And
All
it's
right, so
true and
so
it's
there's
happening.
that. So let's assume for a minute that we win. I now want to get your take on how we can make the country patient with our victory. Because
Yeah.
even if we win, right, he still controls the executive branch. Even if we get the Senate, we're not going to get a veto-proof majority under any circumstances at all. So we won't be able to pass any laws. And we're going to try and do oversight. And you know what? We'll subpoena folks and they won't show up.
Yeah.
And the Justice Department will say, we don't care. We will not hold them accountable. We will not charge them with violating the subpoena. You can vote them in contempt of Congress from now to the cows come home. You can forward a request for us to uh, charge them. There's a garbage can over there. We'll save you. We'll install one here in Congress so you don't even have to walk over to the Justice Department. We're not doing anything because we're crooked, right? So
Yeah.
how do we say we are fighting for all this and we are going to win and we're going to win? But the truth is, while we can blunt some of what he does, real accountability and real progress isn't going to happen until that man is out of the White House.
Yeah, I think you run on telling the American people we're going to hold this guy accountable. We're going to bog him down. We're going to basically try to our best to halt the damage and stem the damage that's been done thus far. We're gonna continue to push our own agenda. There's only so much that they can do, but they're going to get subpoena power and they can halt all legislation and they can bog them down. And that's really all that they can do. And they articulate that. And then when the next Democrat comes in 2028, they have to just move. You talk about flooding the zone, they flood the zone with their progress now. And they take advantage of some of the expanded power that the Supreme Court has granted
Yep.
the president. Not saying that they should be committing crimes or anything, but they should, all these norms and all of these things that Trump has railroaded, just, oh, I guess we can just destroy agencies, rebuild them then. Just bring
I
back
do think we have
USAID,
to say,
right?
right, like the Democratic candidates to say Donald Trump said he was your retribution, and and because of that, he never tried to be the president of the whole country, not for
Hmm.
1 second. He was never your president or mine, and he didn't want to be,
No.
right? So I get that. So Democrats got to say, look, we've had enough with retribution politics, but there will be accountability. Like, you know
Yes.
what? If there's a storm hits Texas, we aren't going to say you don't get disaster relief like this
Yes.
crook does because you're Americans. But the crooks who said it, we're going to hold them accountable.
Yes.
Don't be confused by the difference.
Exactly. Accountability, basically accountability, well, not affordability, but accountability, execution of their actions and healing. Like we got to heal, bring the country together, execute on an effective vision, actually create a bold vision for what you want to do and pursue it with everything you have. If Trump was out here, issuing executive orders, dismantling everything, issue a flurry of executive orders, rebuilding everything, and let Congress challenge you. Let Congress try to tell you you can't rebuild USAID, even though they had initially congressionally created it. Tell them that you can't
Yeah.
rehire tens of
Well,
thousands of
Congress will
civil
be
servants.
it'll be our Congress. They'll be
Well,
eager.
exactly. Well, that's what I'm
But
saying.
we got
So
to rebuild it differently. We have a chance to, we have a chance to build a new country on the ruins of this guy's.
exactly.
And I am looking forward to that. It's keeping this old man alive because I
Yeah.
want to be part of that. Hey, thank you for your time today. I love this conversation, and I look forward to our next one.
Thank you. Great to talk to you as always. Everyone always leave feeling enlightened. So thank you for having me as always.